Before we dive into today's episode, make sure you're subscribed at driveonpodcast.com/subscribe. You'll get my 5 favorite episodes sent straight to your inbox. No fluff, just the best insights to help you drive on. I also want to take a moment to raise awareness for something deeply important to our community, the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. This organization is working to build a permanent national memorial in Washington, D.C. to honor the service members, families, and civilians impacted by the global war on terrorism. This memorial will serve as a tribute to those who served and a way to ensure that their sacrifices are recognized and remembered for generations to come. If you want to learn more or find out more about how you can support the mission, visit gwotmemorialfoundation.org. That's GWOT memorialfoundation.org. Transitioning from the military to civilian life can feel like stepping into an entirely new world, especially when it comes to finding a fulfilling career. Imagine leveraging the skills that you've honed during your service, leadership, strategic thinking, adaptability, in a field that's not only high in demand, but also critical to national security. In today's episode, we will be uncovering how veterans can seamlessly transition into the cybersecurity industry, turning their military experience into a new mission that offers both purpose and opportunity. Now, let's get into today's episode. Hey, Ricoh, thanks for joining me. I'm really glad to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Hey, rock and roll, man. Happy to be here, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background. We were talking just a bit before we started recording here, but tell me a little bit about your background, your kind of military history, who you are, where all that got you to where you are today.
Yeah. So, was in the Army. First job ever was like a fueler, right? And I was like, because I just wanted to get in, I was like, let me just do that. And then I went reclass of combat arms, doing some really, because being 11 Bravo and then also 13 Fox and all that good stuff. And deployed right about 9 times, a little bit of mix between the military and also doing this thing called OGA, other government agency. We all see the cool guys with the big beards and big muscles. And that was part of my job. I was a tier 1 operator for a very long time. Went anywhere from Iraq to Africa to Haiti to anywhere in between. And it was really good. It was really good during that process. And my last pump, 2014, I got shot, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of done. I went for my one last pump to go get money to make money for family court, but I had just finished up law school in 2014, so I didn't need to go. I didn't have to go. I just was like, hey, I got one more in me, and yeah, that was it, man. One more in me, and after that, finished out law school, helped stand up veteran court in Phoenix, Arizona. Really, really cool, really eye opening. Helped do the advocacy for their own cell pods within Maricopa County Jail. Got to really know a lot of politicians and realized I did not want to be a politician. Worked a lot with OPDS, Office of Public Defense, doing cell phone forensics, digital forensics on criminal and civil cases. And I think that was the onset of going into cybersecurity, standing up my own firm, and then becoming a national security advisor to the news. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, that career, how, it's got a whole bunch of complexities to it. You jumped around in the military from one MOS to another, and that's cool. That people do that all the time, where they switch MOSs, and that's for one reason or another, and that's pretty awesome. But and then getting through law school and doing something with that to help out veterans. You were talking about that veterans court. Tell us a little about that and what that's all about and how that came to be.
Yeah, I don't tell a lot of people this. I actually have 3 masters as well, and I'm just like, hey, just
Just a little flex, right? Not this big.
also written 9 books too. So, yeah, so it was really cool. Like I remember living in downtown Phoenix and kind of going through law school. I remember I was bouncing and bartending at like North Phoenix, trying to make it through law school, right? And then I finally finished, and I was spending a lot of time at the VA, being like an advocate, and also spending a lot of time at the veteran court. And man, like every Friday morning, I'll sit down with, I remember Magellan Health, VA Legal Services, myself, the judge, and we're like, all right, so who do we have? And we had this huge docket of guys and women. And they were just like, all right, well, this guy's got the third DUI. I'm like, oh my gosh. And many times it was kind of like we would go to court right around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and start going through the list. Like, hey, can we get a diversionary program? Can we get a lesser sentence? And that was the whole idea, right? Not a second chance, but if you do these things, can you get a lesser sentence? And some stuff, like there was this one kid, I there's just no helping him. Unfortunately, he was smuggling people in a Humvee across the United States Mexico border, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna go to jail, right? It just
Right.
and and
You
the
fucked up. That is bottom line.
yeah, and he was a soldier in the National Guard, and you're like, dude, and the really weird part is he's like, okay, I know I screwed up, and his command was like, hey, we know we got to take 10, but everybody was very nice. And working with the JAG, it was like, hey, dude, you're gonna have to do. He went to prison for, I think, six. He got a sentence of 6 years, but only served one. Now he's out doing some good stuff. And one in every 500 stories, you'll see like veterans doing some good stuff, and it kind of drains you emotionally and also mentally. Like, dude, come on. And
Mhm.
that's why I shifted to another parameter of life.
Yeah, I could imagine that takes a toll because there are those people that are just going to be those frequent flyers, if you will, and they're going to be back. You get them out early, and they're just going to keep on doing what they have been doing. And I wonder, and you may not have the answer to this. This is just kind of more, in my mind, a rhetorical question. Unless you have the answer, and that would be great. But I wonder what it is that gets people in that cycle where they just can't find themselves out. Fine, you got a one-off guy who screwed up, was smuggling people across the border. That I can't. I'm not imagining that guy's going to go back into that
No.
line of work. Maybe
Yeah.
he will. I don't know, but maybe he will. But the person with 3 DUIs, or domestic violence, or whatever those things are, that they just seem to be coming back for the same thing over and over again. It's like, what the hell, man? Like, obviously this got you in trouble the first time, also the second time. Now you're here a third time. When are you going to pull your head out of your ass?
Yeah, it goes to, like, I believe there's one thing that captures somebody's foothold in the legal system, and it's usually that DV thing, the domestic violence, and it grabs you, and then all of a sudden these things, you just see it perpetuate, right? I really believe that a lot of veterans, or service member, unfortunately, get in their own way. I mean, there is this okayness, which is not okay, to be like, hey, it's okay to drink, it's okay to get smashed, it's okay to do these things, and it's like, whoa, dude, time out. you
Yeah.
know no, it's not okay. And then I think if you surround yourself around certain people, it's a little bit better. Myself as an operator, right? I got 5 guys that I know that are still out there in Afghanistan, still never seen their family. They're divorced 9 times. They're living that life, but they call me crazy for living my life. And they're like, why would you go to law school? Why would you do it? That's just stupid. And I'm like, dude, because I already been shot. I'm good, man. And
Right. Right.
they just kind of get out of their own way. And, you got to look at the bigger picture. And I know it sounds very philanthropic and whatever, but like, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like other than living?
Yeah. Living is maybe just taking it one day at a time with no real plan. And maybe it's not even one day at a time. Maybe it's just taking the next hour or the
Yeah.
next 10 minutes at a time. And they're not seeing beyond that, whatever that decision is, that decision to go out and get smashed
Yeah.
tonight. Okay, fine. I'm gonna do that, but I'm not seeing, okay, how am I getting home from the bar or wherever I'm not thinking that far ahead even. Never mind 3 to 5 years or 10 years or any of that kind of plan. I'm not even thinking to the end of the night. How am I making it back home? I'm just going out and you know getting smashed or whatever. So that that
Yeah.
that to me is like, I don't know. Think one more step ahead,
Yeah.
and you're golden. You can go ahead, get drunk if you want to get drunk. Be my guest.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Invite some friends over, and do it at home, and that way you're not driving anywhere. Or what, I don't know. Whatever. I know we're going down a rabbit hole with this, but it kills me to see the same things happen over and over again. It's like the definition of insanity is, if you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I mean, that's it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Just
crazy.
replace that one thing that you're doing. Like, If you're gonna get drunk, go get drunk. That's fine. That's cool. But just don't
Yeah.
get like super lit and do something stupid, right?
Right. Yeah. And put yourself or somebody else's life in danger, and that's
Mhm.
essentially what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You also you're talking about transitioning into kind of cybersecurity and that type of thing. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about?
Yeah. So when I was in law school, I met some Secret Service and FBI guys, and they were like, "Dude, if you really want to make money, you would ditch law and you would be in cyber." And I was like, I don't know about that, guys. I remember I got my first home run hit of a case. It was a capital punishment death penalty case, and all of it was hinging upon the digital forensics of a cell phone. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember like looking back at my first deployments, we would do raids and we would capture, hard drives, cell phones, dump the data, give it to the commander. We'll make a split decision who's on the next HVC list, right? Same stuff. It's no different than the legal side. It's like, okay, so now we have the data. What does it look like? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to abandon law. I'm going to completely do that and go this way. I went from making 100 something thousand dollars a year to $35,000 a year, getting my first IT and security job. And people treated me like crap. People
Yeah.
were like, "You're just a knuckle dragger. You're just a big idiot." I'm like, "Cool, cool, cool." Fast forward now, being an executive of big organizations, have my own IR firm and stuff like that. And it's just very fascinating because veterans do extremely well in incident response and forensics. They do. I pretty much 90% of my staff is veterans. And
Okay.
kind of what I stick with because we're okay in the moments of chaos and
Mm.
we're okay and we're like, oh, okay, we've negotiated with terrorists. That's what we do as well. We do ransom negotiations. And it's quite funny because we'll be sitting down and we're like, all right, so we're talking to, Fancy Bear, this group, or B and Liam. They're like, we want our money. I'm like, man, these guys are no different than ISIS. So
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially terrorizing people and holding their computers hostage or their data or blackmailing people or whatever the case may be. There's all sorts of nasty people out there doing nasty things, and it's good to hear that there's a good fit there with veterans in the in that type of environment, and it does make sense because those split second decisions, those high intensity situations, from my conversations with other veterans, a lot of times that's what they're missing. They want that, they crave that intensity, they want that type of environment. Maybe not with bullets flying over your head anymore. I mean, that's a nice perk of the job, I suppose,
yeah,
right? But
yeah, great. It's nice
um,
air conditioning now.
yeah, right, exactly. It's still, at the same time, you're still operating in a way in a similar level, right?
Yeah, you're meeting the threat head on, right? You know where they're shooting from, you know how they're going to get at you, and you know for a fact that your purpose now is to go mitigate that threat. But
Hmm.
instead of using bullets, you're using words, right? You're using data, and I think that serves the military population very well now.
Yeah, yeah, and that data is all around us, and it's scary just how much data is out there, even just amongst regular people, and who has access to that data. And you probably have a better insight into all of this than I do, but just one company has a data breach, and so much information gets
Mhm.
out there, and then that information is just one more piece of the puzzle to those people who have bad intentions to go out and do something
Mhm.
with that data. And they may not have all the pieces of the puzzle, but if you're like a sniper and you're just patient and you wait, you'll get it, eventually. Or you can, there's other ways that people do fishing for information, and they get that last piece of the puzzle, and they're golden. They get that key to the door, and they're in, right?
Yeah,
And it's but it takes a certain kind of person, a certain kind of mentality to counter that, right? It's not your everyday person who's constantly thinking of the way people that are going to use this data in a negative way. You go and you put your credit card in, or you put all your personal data in to go make a purchase on a website somewhere, and you don't know where that information's going. But I want that, whatever it is that I'm buying, I want that thing, and so I'm going to go buy it. And but now also you're trading your data for that stuff in addition to money, right?
Yeah, data's everywhere, and every time I see a hospital breach, if you just go to different news like Krebs on Security, Motherboard, or Vice or something like that, you will see data breaches happen all the time. And I think we've arrived to the conclusion in the United States, more specific in the world now, that our data has been sold and is for sale, and there's nothing we can do about it other than be more proactive for ourselves.
Yeah,
So that's
right.
that's the that's the crummy part.
It is. But to that point, there are people out there, yourself and your team included, who are out trying to combat that threat that people are facing. And I think that there does need to be more of that, especially as cyber attacks start growing, and they're going to be more and more of them as more and more data becomes available, more and more targets become available. Back in the 90s, they probably weren't all that common because there just wasn't all that many targets to hit. You probably have a better chance getting away with a bank robbery than something something like
You
this, right?
probably do, yeah, exactly.
Back then, anyways. But nowadays, there's targets all over the place, and so it's kind of like, why would I go into a bank and risk getting shot if I can just sit back and scam grandma out of whatever, right?
That happens a
So
lot.
um, so
One thing
yeah, go ahead.
One thing I found very fascinating is I was talking to one of my soft friends. I was like, "Hey, man, just having trouble with this," and he's like, "Rico, there's always going to be enemies. Just go find the enemy and figure out what they're doing and address that." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay, like go find the bad guy." I'm like, "All right, there's bad people everywhere, and whether it's scamming the federal government, whether it's scamming the housing industry, elderly care, ransomware, like if you go find bad people, you will find a job."
yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, talk to any police officer out there, right? If that's their whole job is going out and protecting other people against bad people, and that's protect and serve, right? But in this way, you're serving in a different capacity, right? And I don't know, maybe there is, or maybe there needs to be more done on a federal level, or state level, or whatever, where people are combating some of these threats. But some of these threats are coming from all over the world, so it's
Yeah,
kind of hard when you're talking about jurisdictions and things like that. So I think you know in comes a private company that doesn't really matter what the borders are. You can cross those borders just as easily as the bad guys can. So that's where I think that type of thing comes in, whereas a federal government maybe wouldn't be able to do that, or a state government maybe wouldn't be able to do something like that, right?
yeah, the federal government and the state government love them to death. We work hand in hand with those guys, especially federal agencies. Great dudes, great women. Unfortunately, they're outnumbered.
Mm,
So we are the hired gun. We are the cyber mercenary, if you will, and we'll be more than happy to facilitate. Of course, we're not going to do anything bad. Just put that
sure.
disclaimer. But it's too big. It's too big, and this is why it's privatized. And there is a branch of the federal government that does. I think it's called CISA, and I've had conversations with them like, how can we help you? And it's like they're understaffed, they're under budgeted, and they just can't keep up with the demand. So um, we have to do this.
Yeah.
There's no choice.
So how is it that you work? Obviously, working in this space, you have people that you work with. How how are you becoming aware of these threats, and what is it that you do to combat some of these threats without obviously giving too many details to give the bad guys a heads up on what not to do? But what does the process look like for you?
Yeah, usually, so a few different areas. One, we get notified by clients who are like, "Hey, I just got breached. Can you help us out?" So we jump in there, right? Number two, we have dark web tools and deep web tools. And then we also have internal communications and pseudo personalities on the dark web that we've been at it for, 15, 20 years. You can't just show up, right? We've assumed these personalities and we're in the weeds with them. We know who's who, we know who the threat actor is, we know who the bad guy is, and we know how to find them. So
Hmm.
usually our process is we get engaged, we go out there, fist a fight, and then we start looking at different things and then mitigating the threats one by one.
So is it mostly reactive type work that you do, as far as like a client comes to you with an issue that they're having, or are you doing more proactive type stuff where you're actively seeking out those threats so that they don't become a threat
Yeah.
down the road?
Yeah, so we have reactive services. We have guys and girls on the reactive side. Like, hey, we got a breach. Here's that help us out. On the proactive side, absolutely, we have a slew of different type of professionals, executives, and whatnot. And we're like, okay, here are the things that we need to do, like a tabletop exercise, incident response plan, business email compromise assessment, like all these things will help us bolster up that we're ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we marry those two depending on what the client needs. Bigger clients have different needs, right? Federal governments have different needs, and then the ones that are in immediate pain have different needs. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, for the audience that we have for this show, largely veteran based, and a lot of times guys and gals getting out of the military, they're not sure what their next act is going to be. Whether they were in for 5 or 6 years, or they did their 20 and are getting out or more, and they're looking for that next act. From your perspective, what's the best route to go from military service into some sort of cybersecurity type career field?
So that's a good question. One of the two things that before I answer that question, I always tell people this is that you don't have to be technical to be in this industry. You don't. One, this is going to sound very weird, but if you're nice in IT and cybersecurity, you have no clue how far that's going to get you. Then on top of that, if you could talk to the executive all the way down to the person that you're turning the wrench and be nice about that, oh buddy, you're gonna win, right?
Mm.
If you really want to get into it, you're gonna have to understand security, right? Network security, and just overall general cybersecurity. There are a few courses out there, and then you go from different branches. Like let's say you want to be in the SOC or the SCIF, or if you want to be forensics, incident response, if you want to do risk and governance, if you want to do executive management, different fields require different things, but all of them have the basis of understanding security plus, right? Networking plus, and overall general cybersecurity. If you can get those done it will take you about 3 months to do, you can pretty much get a job any given time. It might not be the salary that you want. That's another thing I got to tell people is a lot of veterans are like, I'm going to go over there and make $200,000 a year. Easy, killer, easy. Let me tell you the reality. You're probably going to be anywhere from 65 to 85 for your first job. You're going to have to eat a little bit of crud for a little bit. And then from there, you're going to move on up and up. In about 3 to 5 years, you should be around 180 to maybe 250. Okay. But you're going to have to prove yourself.
Mm.
And a lot of young men, a lot of young ladies, and a lot of young veterans are like, well, I deserve this. I'm like, you don't deserve anything. The private sector does not give a shit about you. You know what you get? You get a nice, cool little coin that says thank you for your service and maybe a free pizza slice. That's it. So
Right.
pat yourself on the back, get the fuck to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get the free Applebee's on Veterans Day too. So,
I've never taken advantage of that, but I guess I'm gonna have to. Yeah.
well, you know what? It's funny. There's people who I've seen on social media. They're joking around, but it's like what are they going to do on Veterans Day? Well, Applebee's at this time. They're going to Denny's at that time, or wherever. All these different places that are giving out these freebies or discounts or whatever. They're going to collect them all, and it's like they're not Pokemon cards, man. Come on. But no, it's a good point that you brought up as far as the initial reality of that salary base. It's you're not going to be starting off at 200,000 a year. It's just not. That's not reality for this type of work. But you can get there with hard
Yeah.
work, and I think that's important for like an important like wake up call, because I think that's true in pretty much any industry as you're coming out. Is you're probably not going to be working at that high level that you
Yeah.
might be expecting. And if you're coming out with that expectation, you're going to be, first off, I think you're going to be A, disappointed,
Very,
but B, kind of discouraged.
very.
It's like, I can't find a job anywhere. Well, you could. It's just you have to have realistic expectations, and that's what people need to start understanding as they're getting into this. And a lot of times veterans don't last long in their first job after getting out of the military. A year or two. I think within 2 years, 80% of veterans are already onto their second or more job. So it's a, I guess, a common thing that people are moving on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just moving on to another equal, or even taking a step back to something lower. You could be moving on to something bigger and better, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. so long as it's first off, advancing your career. It's helping you get to where you want to be, and you're not burning any bridges and being a ass about it either. Like I'm just using you for this a little bit of experience, and then I'm gone, and being awful about it like that. But people, it happens. People move from time to time, but like I said, pay attention to the trajectory of your career. Don't be like that person with the 3 DUIs who can't think past I'm going to the bar tonight and not how am I getting home from the bar. Think down the road. Where do you want to be, and plan backwards and see what other people have done who are in that career. What have they done? What education did they have to get? What jobs did they have before that? What allowed them to get to where they are? And maybe follow that similar path. It's like the path's already been drawn out for you, right? And I think that's just generally good advice. I don't care if you want to be in cybersecurity, you want to be a pilot, or if you want to be, an accountant or whatever it is. Follow along the path of whatever the person who is in that career right now. What do they do, and how do you replicate that? I guess is what you probably should look for, right?
Yeah, you should definitely do that. The other thing I always tell people is get your job, right? Get your chops in, get the experience you need, keep growing your skill set. Always have a second job or a secondary income, whether it's a side hustle. You'll be surprised nowadays. A lot of young men don't know how to operate a backhoe or let alone turn a wrench. And you'll be surprised, like a lot of men are like, "Hey, honey, I'm just going to call this guy, put the drywall up." Like, pick up a screwdriver, pick up this and learn. And I guarantee you, someone's going to pay you for a weekend's worth of work. You make a couple of $1,000, then get on with your job.
Yeah,
There's a
right.
big opportunity here where men are not showing up to work. I'm calling out men, right? Like they're not showing up to the workforce. So that means men like me, old men, put our belt on, put our utility belt on. We'll go to work, not a problem. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and to your point, even if you don't know how to do all these things, like putting up drywall, freaking YouTube is out
All the
there, and they
YouTube,
have all the
YouTube,
they have all the tutorials you could possibly need to figure out this stuff. You can do it, and then once when you've done it once,
then
it,
you got it.
you got it. Like, and that's a skill that you have, like you said, and then you can take that skill, and someone is probably going to be willing to pay you for it. So even if you're like struggling to find work for whatever reason, go teach yourself something. No one is ever going to stop you from learning something or
Yeah.
teaching yourself something, right?
What I always tell people is like, especially the young dudes, I'm like, what else are you gonna do? You gonna go to R&R in Old Town Scottsdale, do some day drinking? Like, come on, like
Yeah, right,
just
right.
pick up a hammer from 6 a.m. to 12 noon, and then if you made some money, if you did some hard work, then take your ass to the bar. That's fine, but dude, get to work.
Yeah, do something worthwhile, and not only going to work and doing those types of jobs for somebody else. If you have those home improvement things at your house that need to be done, you don't have to call somebody and pay them,
Yeah,
however many hundreds of dollars to come and make those repairs and do those types of things at your house. You can just do it for at cost. So if you need materials, yeah, obviously there's going to be a cost there, but that's insignificant in comparison to the labor costs and all that kind of stuff. So a few weekends ago, my wife, we had a cabinet that was kind of falling apart. My wife didn't really like it, so we ripped it out, and she wanted to put shelves in, like for books and things like that. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just do it. And I go to the store, got some boards. I got the saw out, cut them up, and hung them up. I was there with my son, hanging them up, teaching him how to
that
do
right there is a
that kind
bonding
of stuff.
experience. Yeah,
It is, yeah, exactly. And I was showing them, you got to drill the holes here for the screws to go in, and I was just showing them how to do it, and we were doing it together, and we painted everything, made it all look nice, and now she got some brand new shelves, and I didn't have to call anyone to do it. I didn't have to do anything crazy, and my wife, I don't know, I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but I don't know how much she trusted my handiwork, because at first it was like a book on the shelf, and I was like, is this like the test? If it holds this one book, then maybe we'll put the second on. And It's good. It's holding up. She has a bunch of stuff up there now. So I was just joking with her when she put one book on there. I was like, "What? I went through all this work for a book?
One
Come
book.
on!"
That trust.
But no, it's that type of thing that so even so with in that example, I had that bonding experience with my son. He got to learn how to do something and see that it's possible. You don't have to go call somebody to do this for you. It's a thing that you can do. And he's 11 years old, so that's something that he's going to carry with him going forward. You know, there's not going to be too many opportunities that we're going to make new shelves in our house again. So we may not do that very often, but he knows that it's possible.
Yep.
And so when he gets older and he has a house and he wants to do something like that, he knows, hey, I can do that. I don't need to call somebody and do that.
The more important
And
thing, he saw his dad work, and a lot of young men are not seeing their dad work.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then that you kind of emulate that and you kind of see you learn from your parents primarily or whoever's taking care of you, you know, if your parents aren't around, but you you primarily learn from them. And if the values and the work ethic and things like that that you're getting from your uh, your parents, it's just, oh yeah, just call the plumber or just call the
Yeah, no.
electrician or just call the whoever to come do this for you. Well, that's probably what you're going to end up getting, and so then we have a whole generation of people who lose those skills, and I think that's already happened. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think the next millionaires are going to be the blue collar guys.
I truly do believe it. I
And
think,
whether that's working on a house construction or in cyber, right? Because blue collar
yeah,
is a cyber job.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, like it's just different, right? But dude, I'm telling you right now, if you can pick up a wrench, if you can pick up a drill, and you can do cyber, you'll be all right.
You'll do all right, yeah, and you're right because the tools that you use are they're different from a hammer and a wrench and a screwdriver and those types of things, but they
So
they're functional tools this in the same way that those are functional tools. You use certain tools for very specific jobs. I'm not going to use a hammer to cut a piece of wood. You know, that's just stupid. I wouldn't do that. But
yeah,
you know, in your case, you have a bunch of tools at your disposal that you use not just liberally like for any purpose. You use them for very task specific purposes, and I think you're right. It is a blue collar job. It's probably not. I don't think it's thought of so much as a blue collar job because you're working maybe in an
yeah,
office or on a computer and stuff, and so it's not seen that way. But
it's very much.
I think it's different, right?
Yeah, it just whenever I hire people, it says cloud engineer, cloud security engineer, and it's like
Right.
the key word is engineer, guys. Like I'm gonna need you to turn this wrench. It might be a metaphorical wrench or like a digital wrench, but the wrench needs to be turned in the right direction here.
Right. To that point, you know, any engineers that I've ever known, they can look at, you know, if it's a mechanical engineer, they can look at a piece of machinery and they know how all the inner workings work and things that are way beyond me. I have no idea how those inner workings work in that machine, and they can take it apart and put it back together and they can make it better and faster and
Mhm.
whatever it is they need to do. To that point, those guys and gals who you're hiring, they're engineers on that cyber side that where they know those inner workings of network security and
Mhm.
all these other things that they are paying attention to, and they know how all of that stuff interacts with each other and can kind of follow that audit trail, if you will, of where you know where things go in and where things come out and figure out where things went wrong.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
need that type of mentality. And so it's very similar to a mechanical engineer, even though the two of them probably would disagree. You know,
Yeah,
if you asked a mechanical engineer, do you have anything in common with a security engineer
they're
like you
like
were talking about?
absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Nothing. They're two separate worlds, and absolutely not.
We're
But
trying to solve the same problem.
exactly. You're very very similar, but it's I don't know. It's you know they're in the same family, but they just don't like each other. Maybe.
Yeah, pretty much like stepbrother. You're like, God, I hate you.
But yeah, I mean these types of things happen all the time as far as like data breaches go. You know, through healthcare or finance, you know, organizations. There was breaches at Target years ago, you know, where people's credit card numbers were being exposed, and
Mhm.
you know, are there any precautionary measures that people can take that might be able to help mitigate some of this that you might recommend?
Yeah, I was just on the Chris Cuomo show about this, and some of the things I always tell people is, no matter if you're older or younger, one, kind of do a recon of yourself. Like go out there and say, okay, punch in Ricoh Danielson, and they'll spit you out areas, right? So now, number one, you know where your data's at. Number two, start taking a proactive measure, like pull you down your data. You don't want this, you don't want that, right? You can do it for free. There are companies out higher, you can do it, but you can go there and be like, hey, I don't want to do this, right?
Mm,
Then number two is, or number three would be like, you have to be very active about this. Like every month on the month, go out there and start tuning this. Remember, the internet, as smart as it is very dumb, right? Because it's only going to spit out the information you give it. So then you can start manipulating the data, right? Say, I don't want this here. I want this over here. I want this. I want that. So there's ways to do it.
hmm Yeah, and I always wonder about those companies that will go out and do that kind of stuff for you, because I feel like if I'm engaging with them, I'm giving them my information to tell them, hey, go kind of manage this for me. But that's just one more company now that has my information, and now that's one more chance for somebody else to come and grab that information. And so I always worried about that. Like
There
I
was a
never want
guy
to.
who wrote a book called Extreme Privacy.
Oh,
Great book. He was a former FBI guy, Michael something, and he's one of the guys who created OSINT, OSINT. Great recon tool. If you ever want to follow the face of the earth, or manage the visibility of your data, I would read that book.
okay. I always I think a lot of people these days start having these visions of living off the grid. I'm gonna just disappear out into the woods and no one's gonna know where I am. I'm gonna have my plot of land and everyone's just gonna leave me alone. But like in reality, though, I don't know that you actually can just completely fall off the grid. I mean, even just think about like your bank account. Like you'd have to take all your money out of the bank account, and then so much of money these days is not cash transactions. They're I mean, money isn't real anymore. Let's face it. It's all just digital ones and
Numbers.
zeros going back and forth, right? And so, how do you operate in a society that doesn't actually use cash hardly anymore? And that type of thing to me is just like I don't know. I don't know if it's even really
And
possibly realistically possible. You can
you can.
kind of get off the grid. You can, but with a toe still in it, I suppose, right?
Yeah, so you would have to obfuscate your identity, right? You would have to
Yeah,
be like, okay, the trust owns this trust owns that,
right.
like you're obfuscating. But I've seen people do it. I know of two guys who live in the middle of the woods, and they're the tin cap foil type guy, but and they have done it. It took them about 2 years to fall off the face of the earth, but they did it. You know,
That's well, they're not anymore because we just talked about it and it's on a podcast. So you guys got more work to do. You got to come
like
after me
way
now.
more work to do, Matt. Yeah, Matt, you know where you are.
Yeah, I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but it's to me it's an interesting concept, but it's one that I think kind of resonates with some of the listeners here on this show. A lot of times I find that the veterans are that of that type of mindset where they kind of just want to be just leave me alone.
Alone.
Don't screw with me. Just leave me alone. I'm gonna do my thing. You do your thing. I'm not gonna bother you. You don't bother me. We'll be good to go.
See, there's a
Um,
problem with that philosophy right there, because I was just like that. What's going to happen is you're going to see a problem that doesn't settle well with you, and then all of a sudden you're going to be like, "I'm going to go
yeah,
get this," and yeah,
yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, I don't know if we can ever truly be off the grid, away from everybody, away from society. I mean, we're social creatures. We need to be around people. So people are going to eventually figure out, some of our stuff. So it's like at that point, just be a part of society. And I don't know what the right answer is, but it's kind of interesting. And I'm sure some of the listeners are probably scratching their head right now, thinking, "Geez, maybe I can make this work." But who knows? Maybe we're planting some seeds in some folks. But from your experience in this industry, what are some maybe the pitfalls that someone should kind of pay attention to if they are trying to follow this kind of career path. Yeah, I know we talked a little bit about that initial entry into the career with, the financial side of things. Any other pitfalls that you might have noticed along the way?
Yep. So I'll give you my pitfalls. This is what happened to me. So I came out of the military, I was shit hot, cool, no problem. And I was like, I'm in charge. I'm not in charge. Right. The other one was I didn't learn how to play the game. And the game is being of service and helping each other out. Whatever chip on your shoulder you have, whether it's being a veteran, whether it's being black, white, Hispanic, dude, you got to get rid of that shit. I'm telling you, because if you permeate that through a corporate organization, you're going to get fired. And I hate being that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's also other things like, certain things that if you're like, I go by this or I go by that, you're not going to get hired. I'm telling you right now, if you have certain things on your resume right behind your name, you're not going to get hired. Just kind of the way it is. We don't have time for that. And then the other part is you have to be very mindful of like how you're being perceived. In the military, your rank, right? I'll talk to you this, I'll talk to you that. But the way you talk to this person over here, they were never in the military, so they're going to go around full circle and do this. So just be mindful what comes out of your mouth, right?
Yeah.
And then find yourself a good group of guys or girls, and just kind of huddle up with that as well. But some of the other things you have to be very mindful of every year, hone your skill set, because every year you're going to have to prove your job, because there's this thing called layoffs and you're going to get fired. Just the way it is, unless you're the CEO, unless you have a massive amount of equity, which is the game that I play in now, like you're a line item and you
Yeah.
will be
Right.
fired. I've been fired. It's just the way it is, right? So that's why I always tell you have that secondary job. So
Right, and that's a good thing to have to fall back on, when times get tough. And this could be a whole separate episode of, have X amount of months of savings, and so that way, if you do get laid off, you have that cushion that you can fall back on if need be. But hopefully, you don't need it, but you want to keep it around just in case, and make sure that things go south, you're good to go for a little bit.
you're okay.
But yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I think it's definitely an interesting career. And the way you were describing it, definitely one that I think veterans should check out.
Always.
If they are in between jobs, or they're thinking about switching careers, getting out of the military, going into, something. I mean, this is something that you said like about what, 3 months ish or so
Yeah.
of training that you can do
You
to.
should be able to get a job within 3 months if you're really, really adamant about it. Get the training that you need. Boom. More specifically, if you look at the cloud, there is such a high demand for cloud. Even people they don't even know what the hell they're doing in the cloud. They just know they need a cloud person. Go be that cloud person. And you
Mhm.
can do it. You can make pretty decent money. And also the remote thing, right? This is another thing. This is a fallacy. Unless you have a cloud first company or like, you just employ cloud and they can trust you. Remember, working remote is actually a privilege. So they will quickly gank that very quickly. So you better produce, you better be of value to hold that. But
Right.
I believe in remote work 100%. I think that's the future right there.
Yeah, I think it is too, especially for tech related jobs like this, where you can do these things remotely, and physically being present in an office doesn't add a ton of value
It
in
doesn't.
certain circumstances. Now, maybe if you're dealing more with the hardware side of things, yeah, okay, you're going to probably have to be around when there's hardware related issues that you might need to deal with. Totally understand that. I can't imagine being anything other than in person, unless we have some AI robot kind of thing that can go and
Yeah.
do all that stuff, the heavy lifting for you. But outside of that, I and who knows, maybe that's sooner down the road than I'm thinking. But outside of that, you're right. I think remote work is definitely the future of work. But
There's going to be said, right? When people say remote work, there's a key word in there that's called work, right?
yeah,
And I hear these like I love one of my relatives. He was like, "I'm gonna be on the beach working." I'm like, "Dude, have you ever done forensics on the beach?" It just doesn't work. Like
no,
you can't run your scripts. Like you have to be very mindful. The sun's beating down. It just doesn't work, dude. So just stop, right?
and
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 yeah,
and quite frankly, you're not going to do work if you're on the
yeah,
beach. You're on
no,
the if you're on the beach, you're on the beach
yeah,
for the beach purposes. If you're doing work, you're doing work for work purposes. And I think there needs to be that dividing line. Like in my I work from home, and so I do probably the vast majority of my work is remote type work. But and I'm very fortunate to be able to have a job like that. I definitely agree with you on that. It is a privilege to be able to do that. The company I work for just doesn't happen to have an office. Everybody works from home, so
Perfect.
that
Perfect.
it just works out that way. So, but regardless, you know, I set up my work situation in a place that's away from the rest of the house, where all the living happens, the kitchen and the living room and all the bedrooms and all that. I'm separate. I'm away from all of that, and so and I know I'm very fortunate to be able to have a house with that kind of layout where I can set that up that way, but I mentally go into a different place when I'm going into work. I'm at work. I'm
Mhm.
not I'm not worried about picking up the kids from whatever it is that they have going on, activities and things like that. I'm not worried about going, and going grocery shopping or doing any of the other household things because I'm at work. When I'm
Yeah.
at work, I'm at work, and my wife knows that. It took some time to train us to be able to understand that, but I think that's an important thing to have, is that that barrier and that mental switch that goes on and off. And when I'm back home, I'm home,
Yeah.
and work is at work, and I don't keep coming back and forth, you know because I can see myself doing that type of thing where I'm working till midnight and just keep cranking away at stuff, and that's not good for anybody.
I'm guilty.
It's
I'm very guilty of that. Like, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But Friday night
it's
date night with my wife, so like that's like one day I'm like, don't call me, don't.
right, right,
Or just
and it's important to have that kind of thing scheduled in too, so that way you're like, okay, I know now I need to shut down, and I'm gonna go do
yeah.
family work, and take care of that type of stuff, because if you don't, you might get sucked in,
Oh,
one way or the other,
I
right?
do all the time, all the
Yeah,
time. It's great.
yeah. So, well, don't fucking do that, all right?
I'm trying not to, man. Trust me,
um,
I'm trying not to.
but so beyond those technical skills that you're talking about, those kind of 3 months ish of kind of technical training, obviously there's going to be some on the job. You're going to learn things as you go as well. Technology is changing all the time, ways that people screw around and do all these data breaches. Those things change all the time because the bad guys get badder and the good guys have to get gooder, for lack of better
Right,
words, right?
get gooder.
Be gooder. But there's those soft skills too that you were talking about, that you have to be, just be a good person. Show up to work, do your job. Those types of things, I think, they're starting to get lost in this world, right?
So here's what I always tell people, and I always told my soldiers this: right place, right time, right uniform, right. I'm not trying to bag on the current workforce, right, or the current generation, but they don't want to work. So that means we as veterans, we just show up inherently to work, right? Now, the optimization of the output might not be the highest, but somebody showed up dressed, somebody showed up showered. Like these are the conversations that I'm having with the younger generation. I'm like, dude, I need you to shower. I need you to be presentable. I need you to have a good meeting minutes. And these are the things that I would coach my son. I'm like, dude, you're not my child. You're a 20-something-year-old man. You should know these things. And this is where I think the veteran community has a way upside, because
Mm-hmm.
when I was working for a huge World Bank one time, um, 0500 man, me and this guy, never forget him. He's in Phoenix. His name is Chief Warrant Officer Jordan Lambro, and he was my mentor to help me run marathons. And we're there at 03 or 3:45, running 8 miles in the morning. Shit, shower, and shave by 0500. Also, my morning meetings by 6, and it was. And everyone was like, "How do you guys do it?" It's like, "How do you not?" Right? Like,
Right.
I don't
Well,
understand.
and I think that's just goes back to the discipline that gets instilled in you. I mean, day one of basic training, that's where it starts, right? And you get that drilled into you, and then throughout your military career, it continues to be reinforced and drilled into you even more.
Mhm.
And you understand the value of setting a schedule and keeping to it, and you are able to see the benefits of that. If you're getting up early to exercise, you're starting to see the health benefits as time goes on, and you're getting into work on time,
Hmm.
ready to go. You've already been up for a few hours, so you're not like slugging in with your cup of coffee or Starbucks or whatever, and just starting to get the engine turned on. Like you've been on
Yeah.
for quite some time, so you're ready to go. You're hitting the ground running, and you're getting up that early in the morning. It doesn't provide
Yeah.
a lot of time for going out to the bars and partying and drinking and doing all those other things. So you avoid all of that, and it's a pretty easy solution. Just don't do that stuff, and then you can do the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's just a. I don't care what career you're going into. That's just generally good advice.
It's
Keep
straight
that
up.
discipline, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all the veterans, like there's one guy named Rusty Warfield that I remember working with, and he would never come. I would go work out with him in the afternoon, but he would be like sitting there. He'd be like eating his breakfast. He's like, "You guys done running or what?"
Yeah,
But the fact like he wasn't even working out in the morning, but he would be there at 0500 and be like, "Hey boys, how's it going?" And then
right.
work out with him. So
Yeah, so those types of people, I think in a civilian workplace, really stand out, especially if there's not a lot of other veterans. The people who are always showing up on time. They're showing up well dressed, groomed. They're
yeah,
not looking like they just rolled out of a gutter. Like they're looking they're looking presentable and are ready to go, hitting the ground running. I think those are the people that are just gonna really stand out
yeah,
in a workforce. So this is I think this goes beyond cyber and
yeah,
any other types of career fields that you might be talking about, but it just goes to show that there are so many different career fields that a military background will be
yeah,
applicable to,
yeah.
and will make you stand out. And you said earlier that nobody cares if you're in the military, and that's absolutely right. Nobody cares about that. I mean, yeah, sure, they're going to have their
Yeah.
oh, we support veterans, and they're going to go put their banners up and all that kind of bullshit. But
You get one day, buddy. You get one day.
you get one day of, yeah,
One day.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that's a pat on the shoulder, and get back to work because we still
Two
got
slices
shit
of
to do.
pizza, man. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. But so they care to that extent, but at the end of the day, what they really care about is what are you going to do
Yeah.
for us, for this company.
Mhm.
This is not a free ride
Yeah.
that you're getting, and it doesn't. I don't care what company you're working for.
Yeah.
You're not just going to go in and have them cut you a paycheck for being you.
No,
Like
not that awesome.
it's just not going to happen. So that work piece is certainly important. And if you come in and you're the one who's standing out as the person who looks like they actually give a shit, you're gonna advance a hell of a lot quicker. And I
And
think
it's
that's
not too
awesome.
hard to stand out to of a person who gives a shit when nobody else gives a shit.
Right.
And they're not working a tenth of what you're just doing. You're just like, dude, amazing. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty doggone easy, guys.
And honestly, the stuff that we just described, if that's your minimum standard, is showing up on time,
That's it.
maybe getting an exercise in beforehand, doing a little PT, coming in with a good attitude, you know,
Yep.
yeah, and being presentable,
Yeah.
when you're doing your work, that I think is going to put you ahead of probably 90% of
Yeah.
the other workforce. And that other 10%, you're gonna put the work in, and you're gonna do the work, and show that you can outwork those people too, and
Yeah.
you're gonna rise to the top just by doing those. And honestly, it seems like it's just simple things that you would do in the military anyways, right?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't imagine showing up to first formation
Oh,
unshaved with the wrong uniform on,
you're gonna pay
and
for it. You'll pay for that.
20 minutes late or
Oh.
something. I just saw like the flash in your eyes. You're like, oh no,
Oh
20
yeah.
minutes late? Are you crazy? I couldn't even be 20 seconds late.
Yeah, 3 minutes late, you're done. You're
If
smoked.
if you're if you're if you're if you're 10 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late.
You're late. Exactly. Accountability formation. Exactly. I don't care how
Yeah,
cold it is outside.
right. Exactly. You get there, get your ass there, and look right when you get there too. So
Exactly.
yeah, man, this has been great. Anything else that you want to share with the listeners about anything related to your industry, or any just general advice that you might have?
Yeah. So, about the industry, right? Veterans, to my fellow veterans, please, we are in a dire need of cybersecurity professionals. And I'm talking about across the board, technical, non technical. I need you to get off your ass and come work, please, because nobody's doing this and nobody's going to come do it for us. So please come join the workforce. From a personal perspective, just be mindful of yourself, take care of yourself, lay off the booze if you can. Just do good things and good things will happen.
I think that's good advice. Yeah, do good things and good things will happen. I mean, it's I think that mindset, it's nothing against what you're saying. I 100% agree with what you're saying, but that mindset is kind of like, planting a seed somewhere. You're gonna that's a good deed that you're doing. You're planting that seed, and you may not see the benefit of it. If you're planting tomatoes in a garden or something, you may not see those tomatoes right away, and you might be like, oh man, don't get discouraged. Keep doing those good things, because that'll fertilize it, that'll water it, that'll help it grow, and you'll end up you'll end up reaping those rewards and soon enough. So yeah, keep doing good things. Awesome.
Good things will happen.
Well, Rico, man, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. It's really been a good time, and I do want to give you the opportunity before we wrap up here. Where can people go to find out more about you and the type of work that you do if they're looking for some either input into this career field, or they want to get into it, or need help, unfortunately, from someone like you.
Unfortunately, I'm not a hard person to find, so you can find me on Instagram, Rico_Danielson_. You can go to YouTube and you can message me there. Those are the fastest, easiest ways. I learned a lesson not to give out my email or my phone number, so we're not doing that right now.
Nope.
There's a ways. Just go search me and you'll see my website, ricod.us. Can't miss that. And then it goes to me. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything, just let me know. Definitely get to it as much as I can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we definitely don't put email addresses in the show notes or anything like that. So don't worry about that. But we'll definitely put the website and those links that you mentioned. We'll put those things in the show notes so folks can reach out and get in touch. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.